Boom, bam, dam, da, bam, dam, da, good, boom, bam, boom, bam, da, good, da, da, da.
Burnt toast!
Mike Clark is joining us on the Burnt Toast Show today. Mike, you've had quite a couple of weeks, brother.
I sure have. First of all, uh, thanks for having me here. I'm honored to be here, and I'm also honored to be alive because I just got out of the hospital.
Right on.
It wasn't as bad as I made it look on Facebook, but I thought it was that bad because it started like, you have a pulmonary embolism and you need to go to the OR right now. And I'm like, I'm just getting ready to go on a flight to the Warsaw Jazz Festival with Eddie Henderson. So now I got to contact the band in Europe and my Eddie, who's one of my dearest friends, and say, you're not going to believe this because I'm supposed to fly the next morning.
Yeah, man.
I can't come. They're like, what? And I'm like, I'm in the hospital. But what it turned out to be was this. So I lost a hell of a lot of work. I lost a week of my own stuff in Bologna and a week with the great Eddie Henderson playing the Miles stuff.
Oh,
Oh, Lord. Straight ahead, not the Miles rock shit, the jazz stuff, excuse my French.
that's
So,
okay, baby.
so I had a small blood clot in my right lung from flying and not moving around on the plane, 8, 9 hour flights to Europe, what have you. So that's what did it. When I got to Europe 3 weeks ago, I told my wife I have this strange pain in my side. And we were both like, it's a muscle spasm because I rode coach, which I don't like to do. And usually I don't do, but they couldn't afford the ticket. And I'm like, all right, okay. So that's what did it.
Wow, man. Well, but you're doing better now, yes?
Much better. I'm on blood thinners. I'm missing about, I don't know, $8,000 worth of work, but I'm alive,
Yeah, man.
and that's that. So that's where I'm at. I'm glad to be home. I got my wife, my cats, my records, my drums, my practice pad. I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I want to start off. You were specific when we talked about wanting to make sure that we talked about what you're doing now, and I'm very interested in what you're doing now. You just to give people an idea for people who aren't as familiar with you as I am that might be viewing this. Is it okay if I do the whole Wikipedia list of people that you've played with? Would that be okay?
Well, it's okay with me because it'll give me time to find my new record cover so I can show you.
Right
I'll,
on, man. And I've got your books here too, man. I've got your books, so you
well,
know
I've got a new
we're all.
book, My Life, coming out on
Yeah,
Bill McCullough.
this
Look,
is your life, baby.
yeah, such as it is.
Right on.
To get my record.
Right on. So Mike has played with Herbie Hancock, most famous for playing with Herbie Hancock, Christian McBride, Chet Baker, John Schofield, Tony Bennett, Wayne Shorter, Joe Henderson, Eddie Henderson, who we just mentioned, Bobby Hutcherson, Vince Guaraldi did one of the Charlie Brown specials, Woody Shaw, Donald Harrison, Larry Coryell, Dr. Lonnie Smith, Chris Potter, and Bobby McFerrin. And then I want to ask him about some of the blues people that he's played with as well: Albert King, Delbert McClinton, Albert Collins. But just an amazing resume. Charlie Hunter. Um, so I don't know if you heard any of that, brother, but you
Well,
got a long list of people that you have played with.
I've been around for a minute, and I've been lucky. I play with all the top guys. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and you started early playing with the top guys, right?
I did. Yeah, right. Pretty much, I got out of high school, and man, it didn't take me long before I was with Vince Guaraldi, and I worked a little bit with John Handy, and then Woody Shaw. I mean, Joe Henderson, Woody Shaw, Bobby Hutcherson. So you can't get much better than that.
Right on, man. Right on. Now, this would have been the late 60s at this point, early 70s, somewhere in there.
Both
Okay.
late '60s and some mid '60s too.
Okay.
I graduated high school in '64, and by '66 I was busy, man.
Okay. All right. So now that was in the Bay Area, right? That was in the
Well,
mostly.
mostly the Bay Area, Vegas, Tahoe. What's the other one? Reno. A couple of small Nevada towns. There was a circuit that went from Bay Area, Sacramento, right up to Lake Tahoe, Las Vegas, all of this. And And then I also went to Texas to visit my father who lived there, and I ended up doing a ton of work in Texas out of Fort Worth.
Now that's where you played with Albert King, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't in his band. I played this little joint, you know.
Okay.
He was the guy, you know. You know how that goes. You're playing in a club, and my wife said, "Hello, darling."
Oh, sorry.
No.
Now
And
that's something that a lot of people don't know is that you played with a lot of blues artists as well. You know, they know the straight ahead stuff and they know the funk stuff, but I was always very interested in the blues stuff as well.
well, I play with. I didn't play with these guys very much. I can't make it into something it's not. But I was working in a couple of clubs, so and these guys would come through and do 5 nights in those days, 4 or 5 nights. I can't remember, but not 2 nights. It was a week, you know, and it would be O.C. Smith, Jimmy Reed, Jimmy Hughes, who had a big hit out called "Steal Away," a soul hit.
Right on. Yeah.
Joe Tex, Sam and Dave, Albert Collins,
Right.
that little thing I did with Albert King, Delbert McClinton. I did a lot of work with Delbert. Ray Sharp, who had a hit out, Linda Lou, a few gigs with Ray. Who did Hideaway? Freddie King,
Freddie King, yeah, man.
uh, uh, Big J McNeely. Who's the other guy on guitar, the left-handed guitar player out of Denver?
Not Otis Rush.
It's Rush.
Otis Rush. Cool. Okay. Cool. 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 Good. Good. Well, I mean, do you think that that gave you something in either the jazz or the funk idiom that other guys like didn't have? You know, from playing with all those cats too.
I don't know if they didn't have it or not. I can't speak to where the different guys come from unless I know them really well. But for me, it had a hell of an impact on everything I do because
Hmm.
I could play my version of a Art Blakey jazz type shuffle, but I can throw that into a Albert King shuffle in 2 seconds if I want. So all of that grease and funk and skank and blues resonated with me as a child. I had a tough childhood, so the blue notes resonate in my heart. So when I played the blues, I'm not from the blues culture, but it seemed to work for me, and whatever I did seemed to work for them. Not everybody liked my style, but many did, you know.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. So when you were coming up, either the people that you played with or the things that you heard, what really had a profound influence on you? Not particularly from any genre, but stuff that just lit you up, and maybe things that you learned on the bandstand or whatever like that.
Well, yeah, I can't list everybody, but let's just say all of the Blue Note stuff.
Yeah.
Hank Mobley, you know, like, never mind the drummers, all of those drummers, every single one of them, from Zooty Singleton till now, floored me in a profound way that it's hard to even, it's emotional for me.
Hmm.
And all of the blues guys, BB, every Little Milton, you know, Little Johnny Taylor, Part Time Love, you know, all that stuff, floored me. Cannonball floored me. Coltrane seriously floored me.
Hmm.
Charlie Parker, and some people who I really, some, not people, I didn't know them. A little bit later, I knew some of them, sort of knew them. But Max and Clifford was a big one for me in high school. Philly Joe, always.
Yeah.
Smith, always. Definitely, you know, Art, well, I'll do some drummers. Art, Max, Philly Joe, Papa Joe, Kluke, Tony and Elvin, Jack, Lenny White, all of that, all day.
Now, I assume you saw some of these guys, but you were gigging at a very young age, right? You were gigging all the time at a very young age.
All the time. And I played opposite a lot of these guys. And the guys I didn't play opposite, my father took me to see, and I would go up and talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I met them all. And when I was with Herbie, they didn't even know I was that. They didn't remember me. I was a kid. But when I was with Herbie, I re-met them.
Huh.
All, all of them. Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So what do you think of as your gig that really sort of was there a particular gig that you had for a while that really sort of um, made you feel like, okay, I'm going to do this now. I've got this now.
I always knew that.
Okay, cool, man.
Second grade, nobody had. I could play like Krupa, not as good, but I could play like that, and it was pretty good in first and second grade. I was a 7-year-old drummer that could play. And my father had a record collection of jazz records, and he played them constantly. So I guess before I could walk, I assimilated all this stuff. And he listened to Louis Prima, Louis Armstrong, Wynonie Harris, Phil Harris, definitely Basie and Duke and Buddy Rich and Krupa and Louis Armstrong. I probably already said Louis Armstrong. Who's the guy that did Cal? Louis Jordan. On and on. Buck Clayton. Anyway, so those records became my records as a little boy.
Sure.
When I went to the drums, he had a drum set there because he was a drummer. So right away I was like boom bam dum da boom dum da boom bam boom bam and I could play fast triplets and I could solo. And my father was like, "What?" And that night he took me to a nightclub. I played with a band. And I played Sweet Georgia Brown. And I had to stand up because I couldn't sit down and reach the pick.
How old were you, brother? How old were you?
6 or 7.
Six.
And then, and then, but through that experience, he would take me to meet other of his musician friends, and they would be checking, how's your son doing? What's he listening to? Is he shedding? All this type of stuff.
Yeah. Wow, man. Wow. So, and then you played in Texas, but you actually never really left California at that point. You were still
Well,
kind of
I lived in Texas 4 years because I had 4 years worth of work.
okay. All right, cool.
And I didn't, I got tired of the electric bass and I wanted to play jazz, so I went back to California where I knew I could.
Okay. Now, with being in the Bay Area, I mean, was the jazz, I'm curious about this. Was the jazz scene affected by the whole kind of hippie kind of thing that was so prevalent in that area?
Sure it was. Yeah. Yeah. Now I was kind of exempt from that, and I'll tell you why. Although I was feeling it and I liked it,
Hmm.
I disliked the hippie thing. I dug it. But I walked into a bar one day to get a beer. I was about 21. And this guy said, "You talk like this is a true story." He says, and this is in Vallejo, California, where Slice and Freddie Stone lived,
Right on.
where Vince Herring comes from. And I said, he said, "You talk like a musician." And I said, "Well, yeah, I am." He said, "You got a band?" And I lied and said, "Yeah." He said, "We need a trio in here 3 nights a week. You want the gig?" And I right home and I called a really good organ player who was down to do it and a great jazz guitar player. We had that gig for 4 years, man. And it turned into 4 nights a week in a session on Sunday, and all the cats came to the gig from all over the Bay. It was a and that was and that's where I really learned to play tune, to solo over 32 bars, play the blues, you play 12 bars or form structures, whatever it is. And really, the guitar player was super knowledgeable about every record that had ever been made. So we spent years listening to everybody. Jimmy Heath, Sonny Rollins. I was a big Hank Mobley fan. I really liked him. And Tootie Heath, Mickey Roker, all of it.
Cool. So now that with it being an organ group, was that reflective of, did you play more of a straight ahead thing, or was it more reflective of what like Jimmy Smith and Dr. Lonnie Smith were doing at that time, or Lou Donaldson, somebody like that?
Well, some Jimmy Smith for sure. Like whatever hit he had, we played Mojo and the Thumb by Wes Montgomery and da 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 da. What is that? Organ grinder swing.
Right, right, right.
But it was all straight ahead. But Wes Montgomery and Horace Silver were experimenting with some kind of light funk. So we do a few of those things too.
Hmm.
But it wasn't a funk or blues gig. We played Whopper Shuffles, of course. It's an organ trio.
Right.
But but it was all tunes like All the Things You Are, There'll Never Be Another You, Night in Tunisia, Monk tunes, whatever we could, Waltz for Debbie. We were doing it, man.
That's
All of it.
very cool. So
Yeah.
when did the funk thing happen then for you? Because did that come out of the blue as well, man? Because I mean, you have a completely original conception as far as that goes as well.
Well, that's a great question. Here's what happened. I was in Fort Worth and I heard a drummer who became a mentor of mine with Delbert McClinton, and his name was Ray Torres,
Right.
Torres. And he didn't play much on the hi-hat. Everything was on the cymbal. And although he never listened to Elvin Jones, he didn't sound like Elvin, but he played real open. He played broken 16th notes and he played all over the bar. And he didn't know what a polyrhythm was. This was all natural. And he had a shuffle to die for. And he was so funky, everybody called him Good Rockin' Ray. Ridiculous. Then, when I went back to California, I found out Ray had moved to Sacramento, of all places. So I went up there to see him, and he became my dearest friend, and he showed me everything he was doing. Now I can physically do it, but I can't do it like Ray. But it was this very open thing, not like the 16th note thing I did. It was very much looser, real wide. But that kind of got the germ of the idea going for me. And then, but I was still mostly playing bebop. And then Paul Jackson and I were sharing a house at one point, and he played upright bass. And one day he brought an electric bass home from a music store he managed called Sherman and Clay. And now I had already started. Now on these organ gigs, we'd play a slow blues, which normally is like toon, 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 cat, toon, boom, boom, as you know. But
Right.
I started like toon, 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 and then I just started improvising. And the dancers could really move to this thing. And I thought, well, if I do it on a slow blues, why don't I do it on a boogaloo? So I start whatever. And I built that whole thing. So when Paul came, I hadn't done it though in a while. I did it on the organ gigs when we'd play a Horace Silver kind of funk. I would do it that way. And I was getting good at it, man. And it was all ad lib. I never wrote it down. I never took a drum lesson in my life, except when I was about 40. I went to try to learn to read. But I just did this night by night on the gig. So when Paul pulled the electric bass out, I hated the electric bass.
Uh,
I'm like, oh man, put that thing back. It's loud, it's skanky, I don't dig it. And he goes, play that upside down funk thing you do. And I played it, and then he started playing his bass lines to it. Right away, what you heard on Actual Proof, we pretty much played the first time he ever took the bass out of the case.
oh wow, man.
Where he got that from is he used to try to entertain the girls when we'd have girlfriends over, try to hit on girls. Party, and he had an old beat up guitar, and he would play flamingo guitar, and that's how he came up with those bass lines. He took his flamingo guitar shit and put it on the bass. I saw the whole thing on my own
Wow.
too.
Wow.
And then word got around, well, Paul and Mike got a thing, so call those two cats. And I'm like, oh, not that electric bass thing. I don't want to do this. I want to play with Woody Shaw. I want to play like Tony. I'm listening to nothing but jazz records all day, every set. I had an 8-track. Would they call them 8 tracks? Yeah, in my car, I'd listen to Billy Higgins. And I never listened to any funk except James Brown.
Right.
You asked me another guy that I thought changed the molecules in my brain, James Brown.
Okay.
I listened to a hell of a lot of that. And
So just his various drummers, Melvin Parker and Clayton Filial and Clyde Stubblefield and Jabbo Starks, those guys. There were several other ones too. I'm not thinking
I
of.
saw them all. I
Okay.
saw those guys.
Okay.
Way I used to go to James Brown shows because my uncles were prize fighters and they were too old to fight anymore, so they took tickets at the Sacramento Memorial. I'd go see Basie Duke, Buddy Rich, whoever. Tommy Dorsey, Ray Charles, and James Brown. Bobby Blue Bland. Another big one for me is Bobby Blue Bland. I had every record he made.
And Jabbo played with him. It was either Jabbo or Sonny Freeman on a lot of those old ones, right?
Well, Sonny Freeman was with B.B. King, as far as I know,
I
and
thought Sonny Freeman was on further on up the road.
what Live at the Regal. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Well, Live at the Regal is just out. It's just that's a monumental blues album. Just monumental.
and uh, uh, and yeah, Jabbo played with Bobby Bland.
Right. He was on Stormy Monday.
Yeah, and then James Brown stole him from Bobby Bland into his band, paid
Yeah.
him $50 more a week or whatever, you know. So, but I saw all those guys. I saw Sonny Payne a lot. The way he played his shuffle really affected me. And the guy that really I learned my ride beat from, not saying that I can do it like him, was Sam Woodyard.
Okay.
He called it scooping ice cream. And he said, you know, I said, are you turning your hand like that for show? And he goes, no, I'm picking the quarter note up and trying to make it dance. He called it scooping ice cream. And he said, play the cymbal for me. I was only 13. You know, no, not like that. You got to lift it. And he taught me to lift and get that tan, excuse me, tan, chant, tan, chant, tan, chant. So I'm still working on it. And I'm
So
seven,
that was kind of a lesson then. That was kind of a lesson. If
that
you
was
showed it.
a hell of a lesson.
Yeah.
I'm still
Okay.
we did it with that big band. The floor was moving in the auditorium. It was ridiculous. And I saw Melvin Parker with James Brown. He was fierce, bro. They had three drummers. And one of them was a jazz drummer, had a white streak in his hair. Fred told me about this guy too, but I saw him when I was a child, when I was a high school kid. And he could play a hell of a solo. He had tremendous hands, and I'd be like, "Ooh!" And he had a real fast bass drum foot, like like Lenny White.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, cool. So now I got to ask you now, coming up when I came up, I became aware of you in the late 70s. And by that time, everybody talked about the Oakland drum thing. And that was you and David Garibaldi and Gaylord Birch. And I believe there were a couple other people, but whom I'm not thinking of right now. Now, was that actually like a scene where like you hung out, or was that like coincidence that you all kind of, you all that had that thing happening?
me and Garibaldi was totally coincidence, and I love Garibaldi. He's a dear friend. He heard me, and he was like, "Whoa, what?" I didn't know what he meant, why he felt that way. And then I went and heard him, and I went, "Oh, we're not alike. We're very different, but are the godfathers of that stuff
Yes.
around the area." And Gaylord got out of the service and used to come over to my house and bring his drums, and I'd show him Elvin and Tony and this and that. And he started doing it. But me and David were the guys. And there was another guy, I don't know whether he lived in the Bay Area, but he played with Sly Stone. Who was that guy?
Gregorico?
No, well, Greg and the guy after him, the guy on Fresh.
Andy Newmark.
That.
Andy Newmark is a bad motherfucker.
Big time. Big time. And so is Gregorico.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a different way of looking at it, what they were doing. That wasn't, but me and David had more of a certain hump we were putting on that thing. And then a bunch of drummers started copying us, mostly David, and then when Thrust came out, me, and including Gaylord. And he was a little later because he'd
Yeah.
been in, but he did the hell out of it. He was a great drummer.
Now, was Lenny White out there at that time? I know he's from New York, but it seems to me like he's on a lot of San Francisco-based albums from that period as well.
What happened was I met Lenny at the Both And Club. He was playing with Joe Henderson and Woody Shaw, and I think George Cables. I don't know who played bass. I can't remember. Ron McClure how can I not remember? I love Ron McClure. He played bass, and I walked up to Lenny and introduced myself, and I really dug him, and he was smoking, man. He was like a cross between Tony and Elvin. Very powerful, very Afrocentric, ride symbol of doom, the whole thing. When he was a kid, he played it like that.
Yeah, well, like the Blackstone Legacy, Woody Shaw, right? That kind of, yeah.
So, so that night, I went over to my friend's house, a great drummer, a bebopper named Vince Ladiano. Great drummer. We used to have card games, so I went. I mean, I've known Vince all my life, and I went over to his house that night to tell him about Lenny White. And I get there, and Lenny's sleeping on his couch. We became really good friends. And I just got off the phone with Lenny just before we got online here. Uh, uh, but so
Was he, so we see he was part of that, he was part of the scene, or he was just sort of around?
Well, no, he lived in New York, but he was coming out a lot before Chick, and
Okay.
he was playing with a group called Azteca, and he got into the Bay Area funk sound, and he really dug it, and he did it his way, and so it was a cultural handoff. He was getting some of that from us, but I was getting that New York jazz thing from him. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, man. Cool. And then Michael Shreve was a little later, or he was like a different bag, or
what's that?
Michael Shreve?
Michael Shreve was part of it too,
Yeah.
and we were also really good friends. And Michael also could play the Bay Area thing his own way. He was an amazing drummer and a
Yeah.
great drummer also at that time period. Yeah,
Yeah.
Shreve, deep guy, man, great player. You know,
Excellent.
way ahead of things way back then. You know,
Especially those like the Caravanserai, the Santana Caravanserai and Welcome. That's a completely original conception. You guys all really had your own thing. You know what I mean? And that's just so beautiful. And you don't see that anymore. You know?
no, we were really all stylists. Well, I wouldn't think of myself as a stylist. I was just a young guy playing. But as it turns out, you know, and then of course, Herbie really influenced me to be my own guy. He said, "Don't play like Tony. You can't anyway. Nobody can. Like Elvin, nobody can play like him either. And don't play like Philly Joe because nobody can play like Philly Joe. Even those that think they're playing like Philly Joe, they don't sound like Philly Joe to me. I get the licks and all that, but man, Philly Joe brought his life to that.
Right. And that's what you did too, man. That's what absolutely what you did too. And that's what those other guys did as well. You know, it was like there wasn't quite, you weren't quite so bombarded with information all the time, I don't think, at that
Also,
time.
we had our own style. You know, remember Butch Miles, a great drummer?
Yes.
One time I was talking to Butch, and he said, "Well, you know, our generation, not that it's better than any other there's no better, that's crazy. But he said, what we did, you listen to Art Blakey when you're a kid, you try to tune your drums and play like Art Blakey. Then the same day you listen to Max, you try to tune your drums and play like, and you don't know what they're doing. There's no book, so you make it up your own way, what you think. Then you throw all that in a blender with your own life experience, your own sensibility, your own way of looking at things, your own ideas, and then you just play. And
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's not like page 7, 16th notes with that. Man, you can. I never did. I've never transcribed one note, and I don't intend to now. It's too late. But I say that that's bad. But I don't want to play another guy's solo, no matter how fantastic it is. I'd rather play my own stuff.
Well, I can hear that there are things that you play. There's a thing that I learned from you years back that I think you got from Elvin, but you applied it in more of a, I heard it on more funk oriented things. And I always thought of it as like that's a Mike Clark lick. And then I heard like Elvin do something like that before. And so those things are coming out, but it's always like it has evolved further. And so now that like you, because you didn't know exactly what it was, so it became yours.
I would take a smidge of Elvin, a smidge of Roy Haynes, a smidge of Philly Joe, and whoever else I liked, and do my best to fashion it together. But I never tried to do exactly what they did. First of all, I didn't know what it was. And second of all, that's not how I was looking at my life. I wanted to play my own way
Mhm.
based on those guys. So
Now,
yeah, I grabbed a little bit from Buddy. You grabbed a little bit from Krupa. I grabbed a little bit from who I'm having a senior moment. Who's Big Sid?
yeah, yeah.
Bob, I grabbed a Louis Belson. I grabbed a. It's what I loved about Tony that I was able to perform all of them.
Well,
You
I
know,
think you're a huge Tony Williams fan, aren't you? I mean, that was like one of your boys, right?
well, Grady Tate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now, I just the Herbie Hancock gig, was that harder for you? Because that had to be more volume oriented than you were comfortable from what we're talking about so far. And when you were playing that gig, when you were not on the road with Herbie, did you go back and play straight ahead stuff at that time?
Well, first of all, yes, well, when I was not on the road, I still had my jazz connections, and the cats would call, and I just go.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that. But Paul Jackson, at that time in his life, was really listening to Tony and Ron Carter and Elvin and Jimmy Garrison. So he wasn't particularly loud, and he would interweave those lines we played as if it was those guys playing. We were listening on that level to everything. And so that's where it was coming from. Later, it turned out to be a big wash of volume, and I couldn't stand it. But at first, it was very experimental. We didn't know what we were doing, you know? It was just right on the moment, right now. Hancock would start playing, and we'd start playing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. 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 So
but very skeleton arrangements. Nothing was written. You just kind of figured it out.
okay. So as Herbie Hancock became more commercial oriented and the grooves changed, am I correct in assuming that you left because of that was not your bag and you went and did some other stuff? Correct?
Well, it was a mutual. First of all, there were two guys in the band that weren't happy I was there for Jump from Jump.
Hmm.
Well, there's that. And I didn't. I'm a pretty tough guy. I'm not a pugilist, but I'm got thick skin. I can hang with whatever. And Paul and I and Herbie were friends, and we had this kind of heavy understanding, and musically. But so there was that. And these guys had trouble following me and Paul
Oh,
because our rhythms weren't regular. They listened to the Ohio players, and it's like, dude, catch, goo, that's not what we were doing, bro.
right.
And so, like, uh, then as they hired a guitar player that couldn't solo, he was a rhythm guitar player, and he kind of did a takeoff on the old Stax records, but with all these effects, and it was in everybody's face. You couldn't, and we couldn't open up. So now the gig became a 2 and 4 gig,
Yeah.
and meanwhile I'm listening to a Love Supreme, East Broadway rundown. I'm Thelonious Monk. I'm into the whole roots thing, who the early drummers were, what they did. Charlie Parker, everybody that played with him, Bud Powell, the whole nine, Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb. I'm still on that, heavy on it. And these guys are on. Have you heard the new song with Al Jarreau? And I'm like, what? So there becomes a cultural war inside the band on more levels than just music.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so I'm like, you know what? Now we've turned into, in my estimation, we sound like a band that needs a singer. I'm playing straight time.
Well, you did when the Headhunters did their own albums, the Straight from the Gate and Survival of the Fittest. You did have singers.
So there you go. So, and I'm thinking, man, I want to play and make a name for myself. I'm not interested in this type of thing. So the vibe is becoming heavy. So it was, and Herbie is a great guy. fantastic artist, a genius man, and an accessible, funny, and good cat. But this is his band, not mine, so he needs to do what he's got to do. But I'm drifting farther away from the band. I'm not hanging out with them. I'm not listening to the same music, and it's just now they're over here and I'm over here, and so it had to happen. So, but here's the beauty of it. When I left, I went right into immediately, like I had about a week of, gee, now what I'm going to do. And Eddie Henderson calls me for a 5 night a week jazz gig we had for 11 months.
Wow.
It was Julian Priester, Waheem Young, myself, Hashima Mark Williams, Pharoah Sanders played with us, Joe Henderson played with us, Dave Liebman played with us. Who else? I can't think of it all. A whole bunch of guys played with us. Mark Levine, and it was fantastic.
Now,
And
Eddie Henderson and Julian Priester played with Herbie before he went to a more quote unquote commercial kind of vibe with
Sure.
the Mwandishi band.
Wandishi, yeah.
Yeah, so that was more like that kind of stuff, or what were you doing with Eddie Henderson?
We were playing straight ahead.
Oh, cool.
Sonny Rollins, whatever. Eddie was just calling tunes, jazz tunes and standard tunes.
Okay. Now, I was looking through your discography, and I wondered how much work you got off of, because there's like a fusion thing that I don't see you being really into, but that's where some people knew your name from. So there's like a couple albums that I wonder if you got work from working with Herbie on those albums, and then it sort of became more what I associate with you, which those albums are like the Betty Davis album, Miles's ex-wife. And
Herbie.
then you did an Alfonso Johnson album, correct? And you did a couple albums with Brand X.
Well, Brand X I loved because they called me out of nowhere. I'd never heard of Phil Collins. I didn't know who any of them were. And here's the other thing. I don't like fusion music. I never liked it. It was all those. I never dug that. I dug what Lenny White did with that in
Yeah.
Return, but I don't dig playing that style. That's not me. And I turned down a lot of that work. And after Herbie, I just wanted to play jazz. But Brand X called me. Alfonso Johnson, I barely remember doing it. I just flew to L.A. I can't even remember what the music was. Something else you mentioned, I don't know.
Betty Davis.
Oh, Betty Davis, that happened way before I played with Herbie, a couple
Oh,
years ago.
okay.
Buddy Miles played guitar on that date. It was great.
Wow.
Buddy and I were friends. He's a crazy guy. I had a lot of fun with it. I smoked a lot of weed with that dude. On the Betty Davis date, that's when my beat is kind of like, like, yeah, oh my God. I was young and stupid. Okay. Uh, but then Phil, Percy Jones, no, somebody called me, do you want to come to New York and audition for Brand X? And I'm like, what's Brand X? Fusion. I said, I don't really play fusion music. They said, well, they really like to hear what you do to it. And we'll fly you to New York. We'll put you up in the Mayflower Hotel. And if worst thing is you can have 2 great nights hanging out with your friends in New York. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. I don't care if I get the gig or not. So I fly there. I go to the rehearsal and all these drummers are like, I'm just like, oh man, what am I doing here? I'm listening to who's that drummer that real great drummer that used to play with? I'm listening to who's that great drummer that used to play with Thelonious Monk all the time? I can't think of his
Ben
name.
Riley,
Well, definitely I love Ben. Before Ben,
Shadow Wilson,
who?
Shadow Wilson.
No,
No.
I'll think of it. But
Okay.
and who's the guy that wrote the book Raise Up Off Me, the great piano player from L.A. Funky as you want to get. He don't play no funky, straight ahead jazz, nasty as a dog. Love this cat, and I'm having a senior moment. It'll come to me. All
Yeah,
right.
because I'm not helping.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. I'll look at my phone and cheat. But anyway, I'm that guy, and I love Harold Jones with Basie. I'm this is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm funky guy. I did that for Herbie because you're not going to tell Herbie at 25 years old, I'm not going to say, oh, hell no, I don't want to play with you. That's not going to happen. All right, so, but I get there and man, these cats got two bass drums and tom. It's wow. So they asked me to play last, and I played, and I just did my thing. Next day, Percy Jones called me and said, "Yeah, man, we want you to do the tour of England." And I'm loving this band. I never played garage rock. I've never played rock in high school. So this is all goosh, bash, goosh, goosh, but it's very sophisticated. They're like, play whatever you want, man. We don't care what you play. I'm like, okay. So I play Albany with the backbeats in it, real
Yeah.
fast triplets up with one hand, not impossible technique, but just, and I started blowing my ass off. These cats are like, yeah. And we went to Ringo Starr's house in Ascot, England, which is the house that John and Yoko sold to them, the house from the video Imagine.
This is not here.
It's in Ascot, England.
Yeah.
And now Ringo bought the house and turned it into Startling Studios. So I've stayed in this fantastic mansion for 2 weeks and we made that record. We made a couple of records. And Phil Collins played drums on some of it and I played on the rest of it. And I loved all those guys. They were beautiful people, creative guys, and they let me go, man. I could just make up stuff. And I did. Check it out. I just made up a bunch of stuff that I dug. Some drummers were like, it sounds a little busy. And I'm like, well, works for me, bro. Don't buy the record if you don't like it. I don't care. Date, not you anyway. So that was that. Then after Brand X, I thought I got to get away from the electric instrument. So I came to New York, and I've been playing jazz ever since.
So that was like the early 80s then when you came to New York?
1979, and I played every $100 jazz gig in New York, man, and I learned so much. And then I started making records with Jack Walrath, and Jack Walrath and I took a band to Europe several times and played some really good festivals, man, the Perugia Festival and a bunch of stuff. And I played with whoever was here, I played with him. And recently, about the last 10 years, I started making records on my own and going out as a leader when I can. It's hard being a drum band leader. That ain't no joke. You're not up in front. And then I went to California and started working with Wide Hive label, and I made one record. This one. It's called Kozen Rufu, and
Which is from Buddhist, the Nichiren Buddhist, from your chanting.
it is from the
Yeah.
chanting thing. Kozen Rufu loosely translates to world peace, sort of. Pretty,
Okay.
yeah, when the world is at ease. And I flirt with the avant-garde on this one. It's
Okay.
not straight ahead because I like that as well. And
So is
then
that new? Is that a new album there?
no, that one's not new. That one's about 2 years old. But then this one just came off the charts. It was on the charts for 6 months. It's called Itai Doshin,
Right.
translating Buddhist terminology to one in many in body, one in mind, like the spirit of cooperation. And this features Patrice Rushen, Eddie Henderson, Henry the Skipper Franklin, and Craig Handy. Now, Craig and Eddie and I are all Hancock alumni.
Mhm.
I have a new record coming out this August 7th called Kuan Ganjo, Time Without Beginning. And it features the same band, Patrice, Eddie, Henderson, Craig Handy, and this time on bass is Essiet Okon Essiet.
Right. Yes.
And that's out, due out, and I'm trying to put some band leader gigs together with that. And I don't have an agent, so, it's hard to get going. But, I play SF Jazz, and and August 8th, I'm playing San Jose Jazz Festival with this band as a leader. And I've been doing SF Jazz out in San Francisco, Coomba, and here in town, the Side Door up in Connecticut, and Smalls and
Yeah.
Mesro, and I still work as a sideman.
Okay. Now you've managed to really, really keep working throughout the years. I mean, it's not like like you trot out the same old stories over and over because you've continued to work. I know that there was a big renaissance in people appreciating your funk playing from an instructional video you did with Paul Jackson back in what, the 80s or early 90s. And then
Yeah.
you did a couple of albums that I thought were, I mean, that really sort of kept you in people's faces or ears. Actual Proof in 2000 that you did with Charlie Hunter, who, by the way, I interviewed him and he's a huge fan, dude. He just loves you.
Oh, I love Charlie Hunter, man. Nobody could look. Charlie Hunter is one of my favorite musicians, artists, and favorite people.
Yeah.
He's swings his butt off. He's funky, and he can play the blues, man. You ought to hear him do Albert King.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. And he's really into that. And he was a wonderful interview. And but I just, he just spoke so highly of you. And then you did an album that they mentioned in your Wikipedia.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Charlie's a serial killer. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, that beard, just look how coiffed that beard is. Look, he's a dangerous man. That's all I'm going to say. Charlie Hunter, man. Woo.
There's somebody with an original conception, completely original. Yeah, yeah,
Ridiculous. Fantastic. You
yeah.
know,
And on your Wikipedia page, it mentions Blueprints in Jazz Volume 1 from 2008, which was named one of the best albums of the 21st century at that time. Best jazz albums. And so, that's really great that you've sort of taken the reins and done it yourself. You didn't wait for things to happen, and you weren't content with sitting in the past. And I
well,
think that's really cool.
yeah, Blue Notes of Jazz, uh, Christian McBride, Patrice once again, Donald Harrison, one of my all-time favorites, Jed Levy, a great player, one of my favorites. This is a great band, and the record really did well. And I was able to get through my relationship with the company. Donald Bailey, the great drummer, I was able to. They were like, "Who's a drummer around the Bay Area deserving of his own record deal?" And I'm like, "Donald Bailey." They said, "Do you know him?" And I went, "Yes, I do." So I hooked Duck up. Last record we made, man. Because he played that offbeat hi hat thing on
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
shuffle.
yeah, yeah,
Woo! On
yeah,
the
yeah.
chicken.
Chicken Shack. Yeah, 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 yeah. Which was I'd never heard that before that record. I think that's a tough thing to get going.
It sounds easy, but it's not.
No.
You hook it up.
So I was very surprised. I guess it was during the lockdown. I don't know, maybe it might before that, but you were part of a YouTube series called Stick People with Lenny White, David Garibaldi, Greg Rico, Michael Shreve, and you would interview people. And the interviews were incredible. It's Dennis Chambers and Peter Erskine, Stanley Clark, Ron Carter, Larry Graham, Jack DeJohnette. How did that come about? That's really a unique thing.
Well, Lenny had a group. We didn't know what to do with our lives because we travel all of our lives, and all of a sudden we're home
Yeah.
for 2 years. And so Lenny had a little group of people meeting online, and I'm part of it, and these guys were part of it. And finally we said, and we just loved talking to each other. What have you been doing? And then we were asking each other questions. Well, ask Dave Garibaldi, what made you play that shit the way you do, man?
Yeah.
Like we're all getting down. And Michael Shreve and Greg, it was fantastic, right? And I'm like, man, this is fun. So we go, hey, let's do some podcasts and interview some cats. And man, it was amazing interviewing those guys, man. They're all these amazing artists with life story, and history, and Ron Carter, Jack. Matt, are you kidding? I mean, his story is so unusual. I mean, he's a piano player that starts playing drums, and look what he did, man.
Right on.
Hey, the drummer from Monk was Frankie Dunlap. I'm
Frankie
sorry.
Dunlap. Yeah, man. I should have known that. I should have known it.
Well, we do know it. We just couldn't think of it. I've known
Yeah.
about him since I was 13. And then the piano player who puts all that honky tonk boogie woogie skank on his stuff, Hampton Hawes,
Right on,
man.
man. Yeah, Hampton Hawes. Yeah, man. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that guy, man. People sleep on him, but he was a giant in my estimation, man. Like swings his, what off all the time.
Yeah. The stick people thing, I think people should check out a little bit more. I thought it was amazing. And I would, every time it would come up, I'd go, oh, I'm going to watch that today. You know what I mean? It was just so great. Just that you didn't even need a guest. You know what I mean? You didn't even need to interview, just you guys hanging out.
Just hanging, yeah. And we have some videos that we never put out of us just hanging, which are fantastic because we're all going over what happened. Hey, Greg, how did you get with Sly? What happened? How did you hook up with Graham? How did that feel? All that's on there, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Those got to come out then, Mike. Get on it, man. Get on it. You know.
Well, the thing is I think everybody's back to their lives, and it costs money to edit those things and put them out.
Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know. But
Now,
you know,
I do want to mention that you have these books. You've got this one, which you
yeah.
were kind enough to sign for me, which is
I,
beautiful. Yeah, man. And then I got this one as well, the Post Bop book. Um,
yes,
and how did those come about? I mean, for somebody who didn't take lessons and didn't start reading until you were 40, what gave you the idea to do They're brilliant. But what gave you the idea to do drum books?
well, I read way before I was 40, but I read it as sea level.
Okay.
And I read charts all my life, and I just kind of learned to do it by looking at the figures and knowing what they sounded like. And then I did some method books. But then at one point I thought I got to get my reading level up. So I took some lessons around 40, but I was already a C level reader at that point. Reading has never been easy for me. Even in second grade, I'd be like Burbank, Brubank, I'd be like ta 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 ta. But I could play like one of those, like I don't know, ADD cat. So somebody, I was working at the Drummers Collective and writing all this stuff for these guys. And then one of my students, who turned out to be a hell of a drummer, Towner Gallagher, says, why don't you do a book and I'll write everything out? All you got to do is sit there and play it. So I sat there and played it. He wrote everything out. I forget who I sent it to, and they said, yeah. So that was the funky book. Now, I was talking to the guys, Rob Wallace. I'm sorry, they had needles all in my arm.
Right.
And
Hudson, right? Hudson?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is like hell. So, Rob and I were having a back and forth on the email. We're friends, been friends for years. I dig Rob and I dig Hudson Music, man. They've done some amazing things. And I think we were talking, and I said, hey, Rob, what if I put together a book on jazz? I'm not quite sure how all this went, but he went, send me something. And I think we kicked it back and forth for a while, and I assembled this book. And once again, Towner would come over. We'd rent a studio, and I'd play my jazz stuff for him. And then we would take it in sections and chunks. And I looked at it all and organized it, and he helped me organize it. And then I put it out. And so far, I haven't heard any negative. Well, of course, most people aren't going to tell me anyway if it's negative, but everybody seems to benefit from that jazz book that's read it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not that it's that complicated because I can play faster and weirder stuff, but not in jazz.
Right.
Jazz doesn't really require, all this type of thing. It's
Right.
more language and a lexicon and phrasing. So I tried to get that point across without being so much like left, 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 kick right.
Yeah.
There is some of that because we are drummers. You got to be able to manipulate the kit. So there's that. But I tried to stay out of that. And anyway,
I think you should also mention that there's a lot of like just stuff that there's an interview with you in here and in both of them there's quite a bit of stuff that's not just notation, drum notation. There's all sorts of stuff as to why you would play this and what your concept was and stuff like that. I think that's really meaningful as well. I want to make sure we mention that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, like the hi-hat as a fourth voice. All of these things I discovered by night by playing. In those days, we played 5 nights a week for 40 years.
Hmm.
That's how I did what I did. Most of it did not come from the drum room. It came from the stage and talking to guys like Billy Hart or Lenny White or Tony or whoever I could talk. Tootie.
Right. Yep. Tootie Heath. Yeah.
Yeah. And um, I wanted to do how I feel about Art Blakey. I don't want to play. I can't play like that. I want to do my feeling on the music that I love. That's really what this is all about.
I think these two books, though, man, really helped to reinforce the establishment of you being a very unique voice. And this is really interesting, a very unique voice in both funk drumming and in post-bop drumming, because you have your own approach. I mean, obviously there's influences, but you have your own approach to both. And I think that to me, that really tends to help really underscore how important your contributions have been to jazz in general, but in the funk side of things too. You know what I mean? I think that that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of that's Herbie Hancock's influence. He was like, "Be you, man. You're not those other guys. Be you." And he just kept mentioning this, and I took it serious.
Okay. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Because somebody else wouldn't have done that, and I don't think that, I think you remember you telling me the producer didn't want you to do that.
Absolutely not. He wanted me to sound like Johnny Regular, you
Yeah.
know. And there's one thing I'm not is Johnny Regular. I'm not the greatest guy on the team, but I'm not Johnny Regular. I'm that weird dude over in the corner. You know what I mean? Like, that's always been me. I mean, I'm in the main area, but sort of to the left.
Right on, man. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now I do want to talk about one more thing. I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to talk about one more thing. And I'm gonna talk just a little bit. I try to stay out of the conversation as much as possible and just sort of, help out. But in I used to collect downbeat magazines when I was a kid, right? 76, 77.
Let me
And I
just
saw I saw an ad for custom amps with Herbie Hancock, and they had a little interview on that page. And they said, "Is there anything you want to talk about?" At the end of the little interview, and he said, "Yes, I'm really into Nichiren Buddhist chanting." And I thought, "What's that?" He said, "It's really helped me as a musician." And then a couple years later, there was an article on you in one of the early Modern Drummer magazines, and I think it was 78 or 79. And you mentioned once again Nichiren Buddhist chanting, and you ran down. It was the first time I ever heard anybody mention Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and you explained it in this article. Would you mind, for the people who are uninitiated, to explain what the chanting is about and what it's done for you,
okay.
and where you got it from? You know.
Yeah. Well, one day, when I told you Paul Jackson and I shared this big house,
Yeah.
the epicenter for parties and rehearsals and music experimentation. We were young guys. And one day, Paul came home and I heard him in the other room going, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho. And I'm like, "Man, don't do that. Something bad's going to happen." And he said, "Well, I met Herbie Hancock, and he said, if you chant these words, you can have your dream realized." And I said, "Write it down, bro. I'm going to try it." So he wrote it down, and I went in and started chanting my ass off. I didn't know what I was doing. I can just see the room I was in. I was down on my knees, and so I thought, I'm a chant to be in Herbie Hancock's band or Miles Davis's band. Now here I am, this white dude in the middle of Oakland. Herbie Hancock's band is very Afrocentric. Everybody's got African names. Miles' band is a little more liberal, but he's playing rock. But I want to play jazz. But I don't know. Those were the two names. I'm still. Time has moved on. Herbie. I'm still thinking Miles and Herbie and Ron and Tony or something like that. Anyway, that was what I'm chanting about. all of a sudden, Paul goes up to Lake Tahoe to play with Little Anthony and the Imperials, and he takes the electric bass, which he's only had for a couple of weeks. And Herbie's manager hears Paul, and Paul auditions for Herbie Hancock and gets the gig. So that, even though it wasn't me, I said, man, there's something going on here. That's pretty close to home.
Yep.
It's good with that. And so I just kept chanting, but I did notice I could read music at a higher level. When I went to the gig, I was solid, concentrating all night, not tripping or thinking anything negative. I was playing better than I normally play. All of it, swinging really up super pocket. I'm like, wow, this chanting has got me in some kind of a rhythm here. I could feel the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Raised my life condition like having a vat of Starbucks cappuccinos, but I'm like, like, so I'm like, wow. So then Herbie Hancock calls over to the house looking for Paul. He's never there. So I end up having a bunch of conversations with him on the phone. Finally, he calls one day and he's looking for me. And he says, Harvey Mason can't do the gig. I hear you play this kind of backwards weird funk. Come over and play with me. So I went over to play with him, and I started playing like kind of Tony and Elvin stuff. And he goes, we're not doing that. So I had a little Gretsch bass drum, cymbals way up high, the whole thing. K's.
Yeah, flat against you, right? Flat. Yeah.
Oh, my, man. Little Gretsch 18-inch, tuned real high bass drum. And so he tells one of the roadies or whoever, put a pillow up against that guy's bass drum. And he said, play that weird, funky shit you play. And I played it, and that was it. He's like, yeah. And the next thing you know, I'm in his band. So I'm still chanting, and I'm like, okay. That's pretty dramatic, actual proof of the power of this thing.
Yeah.
And so what happens is this. There's a reason we don't have what we want, and that reason lies inside of us. Not in you can blame the environment, and you're probably right. So-and-so did this, and that guy told a lie about me and blocked me from, oh man, and it could be all true. Still, it's happening to you. So it's coming from somewhere in your life, your karma. Karma meaning action, word, thought, or deed. So you start chanting, man, for a desire. And then what you find out is why you don't have that. And by revealing that, raising your life condition, you're able to move that garbage out of your life, out of your consciousness, out of your soul, and pave the way for what it is you're trying to do. You also get the benefit of some heavy synchronization. And I know I can talk. Wait a minute. Synchronization. And you realize, damn, I just ran into this guy that's the best friend with the guy that has the club I'm trying to play in. And you're starting to make your way towards your goal,
Yeah.
Way to doing that, you're getting rid of the lacks of confidence, the weirdness, social awkwardness, the this, the that, the other. So you're doing what's called the human revolution. You're changing the bullshit in your life into something positive. And the Buddhist contention of Kozen Rufu is, if one man can change, then you're not going to blame the environment. Because now you have the power to say, oh man, that dude, he said I couldn't swing. Oh, now you're driving the ship. And whether that guy said it or not, you're going to find your way to your goal. And it's also based on a profound determination to help others become happy and bring your own happiness forward. So while you're ascending to your goal, you're not suffering from not having these things. Like, shit, man, how come so-and-so got the gig and I didn't? You don't have to go through all that, man. You just keep going. You're determined. So that's it. Spirit of determination, the spirit of winning, spirit of overcoming yourself. That's right. Joint. So that's the Buddhism in a crash Mike Clark course, if you will. And you say, Nam yo ho renge kyo, nam yo ho renge kyo, nam yo ho renge, and you chant your way to happiness.
And that's where the title Actual Proof comes from, correct?
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And that's really, I mean, that's really the thing that you're probably most known for, is in the greater
It
is
is.
Actual Proof. And what's funny is I know you've told me before that you chanted for a really long time, like out in the hallway outside of the studio, outside of the where
Yeah.
you were gonna, because like the shit was on, right? It was like you got one take, correct?
Here's what happened.
You're
The
right
person
on.
didn't understand what I played on Actual Proof, and he said, "Don't do that. Too many notes. Nobody's going to know where one is." And he wanted me to play, and he came over and sat down behind the drums and went, "Doom, bop, to go, doom, bop, to go, doom, bop," some eighth grade shit. So Herbie didn't say a word, and I'm like, oh man, because the rest of the tracks on Thrust are pretty funky and pedestrian. There's not a lot of drumming, not a lot of improv. And this was my chance to show that I play jazz. And so I'm like, oh damn, I'm with Herbie Hancock, and I'm going to be playing straight time on all of these tracks. So I snuck out, pretended to go to the bathroom, and I chanted for 20 minutes in another studio to be able to play the way that I hear this tune, Actual Proof, and let my jazz voice be heard, not censored by a guy that doesn't understand what he's hearing, by a money person that doesn't know music. And that's all right, you need money people, but this is music. And I came back in, and I had changed something about myself. Rather than being combative like, you motherfucker, I was more like, yeah, okay, well, you got a good idea, which was a lie. It was a shitty idea. We're used to doing it this way. Can we just? And he goes, well, if you want to do it like that, you got one take to make it. So we made it. And I was kind of afraid to go. I knew what had happened when we were done because I heard it, everything. I was listening to every breath taken, not just mine, theirs, and me in conjunction to them. It was conversation. And I walked in the studio, and Herbie Hancock high-fived me and said, "You just made history, motherfucker." And
He was right.
and I didn't know that. I just was like, and the guy that argued with me said, "Thank you for arguing with me, and you were right." And I said, and I remember saying, "Well, I don't think. I always thought when you're in the studio, you play your best like Coltrane. I didn't know you'd have to argue with somebody to play great." Because he wanted me to play some stupid shit. But I found out later that that's a lot of times the norm. There's a producer that doesn't know. It's like, can you just do this for an hour?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Here's your $500. No, not me, man.
Well,
You know,
there are brilliant drummers who aren't on the band's albums because that's not what the producer wanted.
oh, hell yeah. And there's billion drummers that just play straight time, too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not one of them.
Well, now I do want to contradict one thing that you said real quick, okay? On the Thrust album, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Thrust album because a lot of people think that's all you ever did, and we've already covered that that's not even remotely true. But on the Thrust album, dude, those grooves might be pedestrian to you, but they're magic. They're absolutely magic. And the stuff that you get into in the middle of Butterfly with Paul is
Yeah.
that's just stunning. That's as badass as any straight ahead jazz thing that came out at that time or before.
Well, you know what would happen to me is Herbie's records sold 1 million and my jazz records sell hundreds. So that's why that's overshadowed my jazz voice. But I'm not begrudging that gig. That was a hell of a lick, all of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was a good thing that it happened, but it's just it's to me just the fact that you've got the straight ahead thing where that's really like overwhelmingly good, and you've got your own voice, and it definitely comes out of that Tony, Lenny White kind of thing, Eric Gravatt, and those West Coast guys that were all that kept their cymbals up real high and fly. Alphonse Mouzon, that kind of thing. I don't think Alphonse Mouzon was West Coast, but that kind of thing.
I came out of Elvin, Tony, and Philly Joe.
Right.
All of those things on those grooves, I took the Philly Joe stuff and put it between the bass drum and the hi hat. and then turned it backwards and stuff. So a lot of that, I showed this to Max Roach. I said, a lot of this stuff is your stuff when I was a kid, but I jacked it all out. And he went, nah, show me. And I did. And he went, damn.
But I mean, on the other hand, you're always mentioned in the same breath as like Garibaldi and those guys. And man, you've got I don't know of anybody else who has that going on. You know what I mean? I just can't think of anybody else who's thought of. I mean, dude, like Vinnie Colaiuta and Dave Weckl list you as this incredible influence in playing funk. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you've got a completely different touch than that because you come out of straight ahead jazz. I think.
I went to China and with Weckl and I found out how good. I mean, I've always known he's a great drummer, but I sat right on the stage, like about 2 feet away from him. Baby, that dude, bring it, Jack. And his Latin stuff is killing, and Vinny's genius. Well, they both are. So the fact that those guys feel I'm part of them, hell yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there was an interview. I had never heard of the Flood album, the Herbie Hancock Flood album, but Vinny talked about it in a magazine article, and I thought, well, what's this? And at the time, it was only available as an import on LP. Now you can get it, now you can get it anywhere, but that's absolutely incredible as well. Was that a good experience as well?
Let me tell you the Flood experience. There's another Flood that's much better than the one you guys heard.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and here's what happened. We did Flood one night in Tokyo, and we all went into the sound truck and listened to it. And the grooves were so lined up that and we went out that night, Herbie included, and we got so drunk, we were out till 5 in the morning, we're all young, and we had a big food fight. Hancock too, we're throwing sushi and shit. We went AWOL. So the next day we fly to Osaka, and we get there and there's a sound truck there. Well, why is the sound truck here? Well, the producer, the same guy, thought we should record 2 nights. Now we're hungover as dogs, man. So we play, and I said, Herbie, last night you can't get it any more fine-tuned than that. And this guy, the producer, he won't know a good night from a bad night. This night may not get it. Everybody's really hungover. Herbie said, oh, don't worry, I won't let that happen. It did happen. So but I'm glad you guys like it, but that's the hangover night. I'm not making this up, man. This is
goddamn.
You know? And first night there wasn't any more chops or any more exploration, but it was just so unusually lined up. But I'm glad you like it. I like it too when I listen to it, but the first night was better. I just was.
Wow. Wow, man. Wow. Because that's really, I mean, if Vinnie Colaiuta is talking about it in a magazine article, that's pretty good, man. That's you've done something.
With him, he's a delightful cat, man.
Wow.
I did a breakfast with Vinny. I did one. He interviewed me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a beautiful guy, and it was fun as hell,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. So you're still chanting every day, correct?
I just got done chanting before we got on, and Lenny called me. Yeah, I chant every morning and night. They're called morning and evening gongyo, and I go to meetings so I can increase my knowledge of the practice, because it's like jazz. You never can know enough. And I just got out of the hospital. If I'd have got on that plane, I could have died. I had an aneurysm, bro.
Yeah.
So I was chanting the right thing to do. Eddie, my dear friend Eddie Henderson, I can't not go. But I was so in pain, I couldn't go. My wife said, yeah, you're going to go all right to the fucking hospital. And that's where I went. Turns out to be not as bad as I thought, but bad enough to... So I have plenty of actual proof in my life. I have a book coming out on my life. Bill Makowski wrote it. It'll be out in about 6 months on Bloomsbury.
Bill Milkowski wrote the Jaco Pastorius biography.
And he sure did. And he also wrote Brecker and one on Pat Martino.
Wow. And that's coming out when?
I'd say 6 months from now. I can't be exact. I mean, I've already signed the papers and done the whole thing,
Wow.
I'm not in charge of when it comes out, but they told me this year,
That's fantastic, Mike. Congratulations on that, brother. That's
No,
really great.
the name of the book is God Make Me Funky.
Right. Of course it is. And you never made a dime off that, did you?
I did not.
And that's been sampled as many times as Funky Drummer, hasn't it?
Probably almost as much. At one time, yeah, if you go to Who Sampled Who, check it out. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's a great song though. I mean, it's not you're up your alley really. You know, I can
It was. We recorded it for Everett and Jones Barbecue. We were kids. And she said he listened to us practice because they're right next door to us. She said, if you boys record something for KDIA, the Soul Station, to advertise the food, we'll feed you for a month. We're like, bet. So we went up, we wrote it on a napkin in the barbecue joint while we're waiting for our order. We didn't write the notes, we wrote the words. We went to Ray Dobar, Soul City, out on 14th Street, and recorded it that day. And that was the funkiest God Make Me Funky I ever heard. The one you guys heard to me is like the Four Freshmen. It's way overproduced.
uh,
Way overproduced. But the original one was dirty street stuff, man. You
but
know.
but that 16 measure intro, that's been used all over the place. It's, you know, it's up there with, like I said, Funky Drummer, and then there's an Isley Brothers song called Footsteps in the Dark that seems to get sampled over and over and over again.
Been able to. It's horrible. My life is really. I'm having a great run, so I can't be pissed off about it. But if you're going to steal my shit, pay me. If you can't find middle C on the piano and you can't play a simple beat and you take my stuff, pay me. Just like those guys want to be paid.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, and that's a great name for the book though, because that, you know, and it's really a drag that happened like that. But you know, those are interesting albums as well. You know, the Headhunters albums without Herbie, those are interesting. I don't want to keep talking and keep talking, but those are really really interesting albums as well. I mean, and I would imagine that those were things that you did that probably wasn't really what you wanted to do at that time.
It definitely was not. I was the outcast in that particular organization. I didn't want to do any of that. And I wasn't that good in the studio if it's not a creative. You know, it was just really,
Yeah.
these guys were trying to make money and I wanted to play. So I wanted to be like Elvin or Roker or Lenny, or I didn't want to be this guy. Lennon Dugu and those cats do that. They do it better than I do anyway. So I don't want none. And that's how I felt at that time. And unfortunately, those albums reflected my lack of appreciation and immature spirit. If I were to do a record like that now, I'd do a hell of a good job, even though it's not my cup of tea. But I was young and thought I was a bad, you know, made the mistake most young people make. Not all young people are.
But 50 years later, you know, you're still doing your thing though, man.
Yeah,
So
no,
you
yeah.
know, so that worked for you, bro. You know.
It taught me how to not think that the world owes me anything, and it taught me to, if I take the money for doing a gig, then do a good job. Don't be pissed off because you're not playing with Coltrane.
Yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
I was really stoned in those days. I'm not making excuses because I did what I did, but I was high as a. I couldn't live without being. I'd wake up in the morning before I'd get water or brush my teeth or eat. I'd smoke a joint. You
That was
know,
kind of normal at that time though, wasn't it, man? I mean, that was kind of culturally what people did. And a lot worse than that too.
it was the Bay Area, so hell to the yeah, it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And you
and,
survived all that too, man. You survived all that too.
oh, we won't even go into that stuff. And besides, I better get rolling here. I got some business I got to catch up on.
Right on,
Uh,
man.
but man, great to see you.
Great to
And
see you, brother.
yeah,
As
man.
always. And I just want to say that you and I have known each other for about 20 years now. I got
Yeah,
in touch with you on MySpace, I think, in like 2005 or 2006, and you've always been very gracious and very you've always been very free with your time with me, and I've learned so much from you, and I appreciate your being there so very much, Mike. So very much. You know, and I'm here to help. You know what I mean? I hope that this has been good for you, brother.
I've enjoyed the heck out of this. And you ask great questions, and you're an authority on the stuff, so you know what you're talking about. And tell Rob Dixon I said, hey,
Rob Dixon is the finest person, is he not?
love that dude, man. And
I'm
can
gonna
he?
get him on here and do an interview with him too.
Oh man, the other day I was not the other day, but the other month I was at the Jazz Kitchen with Fareed Hawk
Right
and
on.
Peter Washington, and Rob came up and sat in. Bro, he lifted that band up so the spirit hit the ceiling. Like Rob Dixon is a force to be dealt with. Wonderful cat and one of my favorite tenor players in the world. And
Fantastic.
I play with great cats. Donald, well, Donald plays alto, but Craig Handy.
Yep.
I'm Rob Dixon. Those are my three cats, man.
Right on, man. Right on, right on. And I'll make sure that I'll make sure Rob sees this because all that. But you have a
Oh,
great day, man, and continue to feel better. And I want to see you on that 4 camera feed at Smalls soon, right? Because I watched that.
all right, man. All
Okay,
right, bro.
thank you, brother. All right, bye-bye.
Man, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Burnt toast.